Exceptions must prepare for rejection. I think the root cause of a lot of people's stagnation or even seasons of frustration is the fact that they are expecting the playing field to be the same for them as it is for other people. And even when I've referenced certain topics such as like the calculated cosine technique from the publication Green Eyes, a lot of the time, those specific techniques, those interpersonal tactics are meant to elicit warfare on your mind. A lot of people will use intentional invalidation, which is a completely different excerpt in the same publication. They will utilize intentional invalidation to get you to throw in the towel on yourself. And where a lot of exceptions go wrong is they don't understand their assignment. I'll give you guys an example. There are instances where people will be the muse for another group of people's muse. And what they will do is they will throw in the towel when they realize that they're not receiving credit. But exceptions have to come to terms with the fact your road to success is going to look completely different. You might deal with a little bit more friction. You may have to deal with the calculated cosine techniques. You may have to deal with the intentional invalidation because you are the jack of all trades. This is a conversation that I think we don't have enough. People who embody multiple characteristics that are considered aspirational or inspirational, a lot of the time when they step into certain spaces, the first thing that they're going to experience is friction, not exception. There are levels to the social acceptance game. So yes, I'll give you even a superficial example. So you may have a person who is in a particular room and they are absolutely stunning, but they may not be a professional threat. So that person will be welcomed with open arms. Now, the other person who walks into the room isn't just quote unquote physically attractive, and as stated before, beauty is subjective, but let's just say according to this group standards, this person is also deemed physically attractive, but they are also intelligent and they're also confident in themselves. So this person will not receive acceptance because they have too many qualities that makes them be perceived as a threat. So I actually posted a video about this months ago, maybe, talking about how, in particular, when we're talking about just a superficial trait, such as attractiveness, in order for people to be able to tolerate you, and so those feelings of jealousy won't rise to the surface, or maybe feelings of inadequacy or competition, in order for them to tolerate you and embrace you with open arms, they have to either find chink in your armor or they have to crack your armor for themselves. So a woman who is, we'll talk about women in particular, a woman who is physically attractive can only be accepted if she is also the quote unquote bimbo in that environment. That is the stipulation in order for you to be embraced with open arms. You have to be, for lack of better words, game goofy in order for people to tolerate you, because that's a way for them to feel superior over you. Okay, yeah, you're physically attractive, but you're not that bright. And because I know you're not that bright, I'm going to bring that up, or I'm going to rub in your face the fact that I may be more intelligent in a particular area than you, to knock you down a size and to make myself feel better. And because I know that I have that in my ammunition against you, I can tolerate being around you. Because whenever I feel like you're getting too high for my comfort, I have something to knock you off of your pedestal. Some people will do this reputation-wise. For example, say that there's a woman with a quote-unquote scarlet letter, and she's navigating certain spaces. She's beautiful, she's intelligent, but if someone wants to knock her back down a size, they're going to bring up some of the sexual escapades that she was involved in her past to humble her. Sinister people play chess when it comes to their interpersonal interactions. And that can also be revisited in the contingent companion excerpt in the same publication, Green Eyes. There are some people, they're very strategic about who they allow into certain spaces and who they allow into their friend group. And that strategy is rooted in the fact that I can only be associated with you as long as there's some area in your life that I feel I have some kind of superiority over. Another way is trauma bonding. If someone feels like that there's a traumatic experience that you've had that you haven't healed from, or that is proving to be a hindrance in maybe your success or in your relationships, that is also a way for them to reinforce some kind of superiority complex over you, because they will bring that up in the heat of the moment to take you back to that traumatic event and play with your mind and get you in an emotionally and mentally disturbed space. But what happens when you encounter these types of individuals and say you have a positive attribute about yourself, or maybe you have multiple positive attributes about yourself? You may be the kind of person who embodies being the jack of all trades. I have several videos talking about the jack of all trades archetype in particular. A reference, a muse, when I think about the jack of all trades that I typically refer to is Selena Quintanilla. Very beautiful, powerful voice, can dance, was fashionable, had a phenomenal, a charming personality. And see, someone who's trying to find that crack in your foundation, what happens when they can't? A lot of the time, they will abuse that proximity because they're trying to gain some kind of intel on you to make themselves feel better, or maybe to start talking negatively about you to other people to balance the playing field. But what happens when they don't have the opportunity to do so? They will begin to weaponize their proximity. And in some ways, that looks like putting you in a physically compromising position. Some people get hurt because they abused that proximity thinking that they were going to gain intel or do something sinister, but because you didn't give them the opportunity to do so. And it may have been by accident. You just living in your truth, contradicting what they thought about you or what they thought they can dig up, is sending them into a mental frenzy. And now they're making it their mission to put you in harm's way to prove themselves right. There's actually I believe, is it a theory or is it like a social scientific term, but it's considered, or not considered, but it's titled confirmation bias, where you could deal with someone and they can be completely wrong, but because they cannot accept the fact that they're wrong about something or someone, they will orchestrate a situation. They will manipulate circumstances and manipulate people to prove themselves right. This is why, and I've recently posted this in my community tab, even when we think about this concept of being receptive to someone telling you like certain truths, or being receptive to some kind of correction and not being defensive about it, even that, someone who has an issue with that, someone who will go out of their way to sabotage another person because they have to be right all the time about everything, is a dangerous person. And this is why, even in the video that I did talking about like social etiquette and social elegance and things like that, and even learning how to transmute rejection and not internalize it, not becoming really defensive. And ironically enough, we talked about this in this past week's Bible study session on Zoom, but not internalizing rejection, because at the end of the day, when you are operating from a healthy space, you acknowledge the fact that people have the right to choose you, just like how you have the right to choose them. You have the right to choose whether or not you want to be around a particular group. You have the right to choose, okay, I thought this was going to be my cup of tea. This isn't my cup of tea. I can pivot. People have the right to do the same thing. So when you're someone who goes out of your way to force a shoe to fit, this is why I will always be an advocate for pivoting, because it's a matter of choice. You have a choice to realize this isn't working and to pivot. And sometimes it's not completely pivoting from a relationship or an opportunity, but it can also look like pivoting your strategy, tweaking some things so that you can get a little bit better, get sharper. But if we're talking about this in an interpersonal capacity, it's completely fine for you to acknowledge, I don't necessarily think that this is a fit. Some relationships, it could present as seasonal. You know, it started out strong, and then once certain seasons came to pass, you were like, you know what, I think we need to change some things up. And people may do the exact same thing with you. And what typically goes left is the type of people who don't know how to embrace this. It is okay for you to step back and step down and be like, you know what? This just is not a fit anymore. I don't need to keep fighting for this. And if I'm going to be completely honest, when we expand on this, individuals who really struggle with confirmation bias, needing to always, we'll keep it strictly relational, needing to always be right about a particular person. When we dissect that from the confirmation bias lens, someone can come to you with the truth about a particular person, with receipts, and be like, that did not happen. That person did not do this. That person did not say this. And because this person is so convinced that they are a horrible individual, they will overlook the truth just to make themselves appear right to other people. This is how mobbing instances come about. They will bring in flying monkeys to confirm something that isn't even true about an innocent individual. And that's like a whole other layer as to why I encourage people, when you experience rejection, I cannot necessarily ascribe to the trope of you forcing a shoe to fit or you overstaying your welcome. Some people are dealing with the warped mentality regarding you. They're battling with confirmation bias. That's why even when you, let me put it like this. That's why even when you tell the truth about something that you did or didn't do, they take it as a personal offense. You exposing the truth, even in a respectful manner, is a personal offense to them because they have to be right about you. Even if they're wrong, they still want to be right. And they will manipulate circumstances. They will manipulate people in order to be perceived as right. And at that point, the receipts and the documentation won't even matter because they will go above and beyond to move the goalpost. They will create a problem to confirm their bias about you. So as a quote unquote exception, I really want you to be careful. Because sometimes you'll step into certain spaces and you will think that the playing field is going to be the same for you, and it's not. That's why you will implement feedback and they will move the goalpost. That's why when you go and you ask your peers, they can't relate to you. And you're like, well, wait a minute. Am I the problem? Is there something going on? Like I asked my peers and they said they didn't experience this. And what's really scary is, yes, there are instances where you might have to tweak, you might have to change some things up about yourself. But what happens when you do those things, you implement that feedback and you're still faced with some kind of friction because there's a deeper issue there. And the constructive criticism is operating as a mask. That's not the reason why these people are having a difficult time tolerating you. They're having a difficult time tolerating you because it's like every single time they throw something your way and you go back and you fix it, or you come back out and you're just like, all right, you don't even, you know what? As I'm thinking about this, you guys, this is a biblical reference. It's making me think about the story of Saul and David. We also talked about this in our Bible study session. Saul kept setting up traps for David and would get mad that David wouldn't fall into the traps that he set for him. Going back to that confirmation bias piece, when you're dealing with people who are blinded by that confirmation bias, it doesn't matter how much you change. It does not matter what you do, what you say, what you don't do, what you don't say. They're constantly looking for an opportunity to knock you off of a pedestal. And you'll be sitting there confused, like, I'm not even putting myself on a pedestal. You're putting me on a pedestal. What's the problem? But because they're so blinded, you can't reason with them. The truth isn't even enough for them to back up off of you. And they will weaponize their relationships and their interactions with other people to convince you that you're in the wrong. Oh, well, other people didn't have to experience this. Other people didn't have to X, Y, and Z. Or when I told this person this, it wasn't this much of a problem. And they can't even see the fact that you're the problem. This person is going back to the drawing board and doing everything that you told them to do, but nothing is ever enough for you. And that was perfectly depicted in the biblical story of Saul and David. Nothing was ever enough for Saul. David was putting himself on the front line at war on behalf of Saul. And when David would come back vindicated, and these victories were for Saul. David was getting praise here and there, but that wasn't David's reign. It was Saul's reign. So at the end of the day, David was still answering to Saul. And Saul was so insufferable that even David putting his life on the line for him wasn't enough for him to put his weapons down. Wasn't enough for him to be like, you know what, let me ease off of this kid. He's shown himself trustworthy. He's proven himself to be loyal. Let me stop. So this is why I often tell people, if a person has reached a state of envy regarding you, you cannot take it lightly. And that's why you'll be sitting there confused. So we'll dive into the story of King Saul and King David a little bit more. What I really appreciate about this biblical story is jealousy was clearly depicted. In my Bible, it actually talks about Saul's jealousy of David, like it broke it down in detail. But in other environments where people never considered the fact that this person is constantly critiquing this individual and guising it as feedback, it's not necessarily constructive. This person is intimidated by them. That's why nothing that they do is ever enough. It takes, outside of you being the kind of individual who's experiencing the attacks personally, people who aren't experiencing the attacks but they peep the play, it takes exceptional insight, judgment, and discernment to perceive what is happening. Because a lot of people are only fixated on, this is why I use terms and why my handle is misread the room. A lot of people hyperfixate on what is happening to them personally, and they completely disregard reading the room at large. And then once people who were doing all kinds of crazy things to others, they finally lash out on them, they act surprised, like, oh my gosh. And I'm just like, how could you believe that you were going to be the exception in that capacity? This person has shown a track record of belittling, of talking down to, of disrespecting everyone that they have proximity to. What made you believe that your day was not going to come? It does not matter how agreeable you are, how quiet you are. What makes you think that your day was not going to come if you keep feeding that beast by enabling them? And yes, you being quiet is a form of enabling them. You still being present in that environment and keeping them in a position of power to where they can constantly abuse their authority is still enabling them. So reading the room is very important, and people who have mastered this skill, they are the types of individuals, and it's few and far between, because most people are going to fall in line. But it's few and far between that you will have a person who reads the room at large, and they'll be able to see, oh, this person's only doing this because they're intimidated. This person is not doing anything wrong. And it takes an exceptional amount of courage to even speak up about it. Some people will see it and not say anything. Some people will see it and not go out of their way to cover that person. That's why I really appreciate the story of Saul and David, because it broke it down, but it also highlighted instances where you will have allyship. Saul's own son was the main person who highlighted the fact, you are so jealous of David, I'm actually concerned. Like, I actually cannot ride with you. And you're my blood father, and I can see that you're doing too much. And Jonathan, out of guilt and out of concern, actually went out of his way to make a pact with David. Like, look, anything that my dad is trying to do, just know I'm not involved with it. And in fact, if I ever catch word that he's going to put you in harm's way, I'm always going to give you a heads up so that you can flee and so that you can separate yourself. So aside from allyship, I want you all to put into perspective how mentally warped a person has to be to where their own flesh and blood, their own child that they brought into this world, was like, you know what? My pops is tripping. And I'm just going to go ahead and apologize on his behalf, but I'm also going to give you a heads up. He's too far gone. I can't get through to him. I didn't explain to him David has been nothing but good to us as a family. His own son couldn't even reason with him. And what really frustrated Saul, tying this back to the title of this video is the exception piece. What really frustrated Saul is the fact that David was exceptional. A lot of the tactics, I believe, Saul was using against David, I think the reason why he was becoming more and more frustrated is because those tactics weren't working like they would have on another person. So when you are exceptional in some capacity, when people are throwing insults at you or people are throwing rocks in your path and you find a way to work around it, or you overlook the insult, you stay focused, you create something different, you rebrand, you reinvent, they're taking that as a personal offense. When you are exceptional, they're taking that as a personal offense because these tactics have worked on other people in the past. So as the exception, you have to prepare for that pushback. You have to mentally prepare. You have to emotionally prepare. You have to prepare tangibly. But to give you guys an example of people taking this as a personal offense when you are exceptional and learning how to embrace this and anticipate some of these attacks, I'm going to read from an excerpt in the publication In the Lion's Den, Navigating Systems of Power. And the excerpt is titled, "One's vindication is not always a depiction of victory. To defeated foes, it's an opportunity for vengeance. Recovery is a journey that may involve both reconciliation attempts and reignited conflicts. Some people may feel threatened by your redemption, interpreting it as a personal loss or source of embarrassment. When faced with those who betrayed you, it's entirely acceptable to refrain from retaliating. However, planting new seeds in barren, spoiled ground is equally unwise. Those will accept their defeat gracefully, seeking to make amends, especially if they perceive that a truce serves their interest. Yet others may view your redemption as a direct attack on their ego and reputation. These individuals will exhaust every resource to protect what they perceive as their legacy of dominance." So when you become the exception, and sometimes it happens accidentally, but nevertheless, when you realize you are in a position of exceptionality, those who did everything in their power to intimidate you, to sabotage you, to back you into a corner, you've officially made them out to be your enemy. Even if that wasn't your intention, but that's how they perceive it because they're operating from a space of ego and of entitlement. They perceive your vindication as a personal offense. Okay? So as an exception, prepare for rejection. People will not embrace you with open arms when you show them that no matter what they did, no matter what they said about you, it couldn't stop what God was doing in your life. Okay? That's all that I have for this video today. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. But of course, I want to hear you all's comments, opinions, perspectives, as well as some personal experiences in the comment section below. I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next one, babes. Take care. I will be doing a virtual session for the women who were interested in us doing a group talking a little bit about hardships and establishing a safe place that is meant to promote healing and community. So that's finally here. For those who watched my Milena review where I talked a little bit about beauty envy, you guys were telling me that you all would be interested in a group. So that will be taking place December 3rd, 2025. Same time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the process is the same. All you have to do is go to my community tab, click on the corresponding link, and submit your email address so you can receive the virtual meeting link.